a man came in ordered a fried egg sandwich. And I wrote it down carefully, took the order out to Pat, got the sandwich, handed it to him, and he ate it. And I looked at him and I didn't know what to do, but I told him he owed some money for that sandwich. Oh, he said, "I don't pay," and got up and walked out. We had the news that they were going to come in and put a whole brace on the school to keep it from falling off the edge and back. Got up the next morning and there was a whole wagon on top of the gym. Big kids had taken it up sort of piece by piece and put it back together again on top of the school. So it was somebody else's problem to get it down. The history of the Denham Hotel.
And that's the one that became the Northern Hotel?
Right. The Northern was built by Morse Denham's mother. After J. Denham died, she left for a few years and then came back. And eventually had the whole Northern Hotel. I just call it the Denham Hotel to keep it separate from the Chester Hotel, which was originally the Lannon.
Right.
And the Denham Hotel, Northern Hotel, was originally the Rothman Hotel.
So so Denham's did not build it? She just came and took that over as a business?
You know, I think I read in something
Yeah,
that
I think Bob
she
and Andrew
came back and bought the Lannon Hotel, and then left and came back and built the Northern Hotel. But someplace in there she married Gus Rothman, and he disappeared.
Okay, so on the corner is the building where you lived that had the
Right.
post office in it. And the next building to the south, what was in there?
I always thought it was the Kent building. But when my dad bought the building we lived in, he bought it from Kent. But one of the pictures in history shows that space empty. So I don't know whether Kent owned both of those, whether Kent was in the first one, the second one. Morse Denham eventually bought the second house there.
That's what I was thinking, that the second one is where Peggy Denham lived next door to you.
No, she didn't. She lived in the Northern Hotel.
Okay.
And in the Northern Hotel, they had quite a few rooms that weren't always used. One of them was Peggy's escape room. So every time Joe got mad at my mother, she would go over with her suitcase and Peggy would pack hers and they would go up to the room clear in the back of the far hall, and that's where they escaped. And Peggy Denham's mother would let my mother know that Joe was there and probably locked them in the room for the night, and that took care of that. But then Morse Denham had a sister, Merle, and she was an artist. And the picture I remember especially, and I think Peggy Denham still has it, was of the big tree down on the road going to the Red Bridge that we talked about last time. Gorgeous tree. I think there's only the stump there left now. But the Denham Hotel was where the Northern Hotel was and where Stowey's is now, isn't it? Pretty much. And the hotel had a restaurant at the south end. But at one time, I remember it must have been probably about Monty's 10th birthday, they were living in that south end, and we had a birthday party down there. But later, by the time I was in high school, they had a restaurant there. That might have been after the Stubers came in.
So did Stubers buy that from Denham's?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I remember when Stubers had it, you walked into a main lobby that
Big
was
lobby,
up 2
that was
steps,
always there.
and then to the south there was a cafe, and to the north there was a bar.
There was a cocktail lounge in between the bar and the cafe. And Peggy tells that she was not allowed, and I remember that too. We could go into the cocktail lounge, and Morse, if there was no one in the bar, he might bring us a Coke out that we could drink, all growing up in the cocktail lounge. But she was never allowed to go into the bar either. That was a very strict thing, which was good.
And for a period of time, that space in between the bar and the hotel, even after the hotel was torn down, was an insurance office.
I think you're right.
I
I
think
don't
that
remember it
Carol
too
Galt
much, but okay.
Worked there before it was at the
Yeah.
rear
That
of
was
the
after
bank.
the hotel was taken down?
Yeah. Well, the
Okay.
hotel was still up. I remember the nuns would come and do religious education for 2 weeks in the summer, and we used the cafe on the south side of the hotel for a classroom and for lunches and stuff.
Okay, that. I remember it being restaurant, and haven't thought of it for years, but I'm sure it was Blanche Schuler cooked there part-time, and she made banana cream pie. And if I saved my money carefully, I would have enough to go up every once in a while and get a piece of that banana cream pie. And that was an absolute dream. The other thing I do remember, I think all of my sisters probably at one time or another did some waitressing at the cafe in the summer, something. I was there one day, and Pat Stuber had it at that time. And a man came in and ordered a fried egg sandwich. And I wrote it down carefully, took the order out to Pat, got the sandwich, handed it to him, and he ate it. And I looked at him and I didn't know what to do, but I told him he owed some money for that sandwich. Oh, he said, I don't pay, and got up and walked out. And I went back to Pat, totally at a loss. But what she said was, oh, I always give him a sandwich in the afternoon. And that was Pat. Just that kind of a person, which is what we're reading about so much in our social justice now, but it existed. They were taken care of. The other one that I remember especially, except I don't remember the name, but there was a couple. He was a retired railroad man living down on the road to the dump now, where Mrs. Simonson lived for a while. You have Dartman's, well, it's out beyond the 4 new houses there. But there was a little shack there, and his wife was a very heavy woman. And I remember her especially because she had the ulcer on the leg and couldn't get out of bed. But we were very often sent down with a meal. And meals had to have been taken down there, when I think of it, by different people in town, different times. They would know they would need food, and they were taken care of that way. Joe Breckenridge is the other one I remember especially. He was a painter, and he would stand on the outside of the hotel in the corner where the cocktail lounge was. And he painted quick draw artist, I'm sure, but he could take that brush, and all of a sudden that stick in the center had grown into a whole tree. And I sat and watched him, thought he was great. And I eventually did a little bit of painting there with him. He would show me how to do something. But many, many years later, like I would say it was in the last 20 years now, I got a call from a woman who had just bought a hotel out in Washington, asking me if I knew anything about Joe Breckenridge. And when she bought this hotel, every surface, any place, had a painted scene on it. And he had lived in the door panels, the walls between the doors, just totally covered. And she was trying to find out more about Joe Breckenridge. And all I knew about him was that, well, it would have been in the late 30s, before the war, in the 40s, that he was there. But he stayed at Denham's for quite a while, and I'm sure Mildred had food for him, and he painted signs on the windows, and I suppose Morse had a few drinks out there for him while he was painting, but he existed right there for a while and then moved on. But evidently he got into a hotel on the West Coast that he enjoyed. One thing we didn't put in, because I had it written down, was they built the new brick school in '22. And when I was in the 5th and 6th grade, I know because that was the room that it was affected, we had the news that they were going to come in and put a whole brace on the school to keep it from falling off the edge and back. Well, they came in and drilled a hole, would have been on the west side of our classroom on the 5th and 6th grade, 2nd floor, and over to the other side, and strung a cable through it. And that was the brace that was going to keep this whole school from falling off the edge, and it didn't make any sense to us at all. Enough so I still remember it being there. The other thing I don't think that I got into on the New Brick School, which was our school, was some of the things we did. Halloween was always a big excitement. And one year I remember we got up the next morning and there was a whole wagon on top of the gym. The gym floor was, or the roof was not as tall as the other. But what I remember is that they had taken it up, the big kids, had taken it up sort of piece by piece and put it back together again on top of the school. So it was somebody else's problem to get it down. I remember too, Halloween, one year we went over to the tracks and they had big piles of sugar beets. And those sugar beets, I mean, they were that big to a child my age at least, but they weren't tiny ones. But we made many trips hauling the sugar beets and piled them up on the door into the gym. Was an addition on the east side of the main school. And we put enough sugar beets there so you couldn't open the door, and we thought we were really doing pretty well there. The one night I remember was the worst night of all Halloween. We were running from something, and Joanne Mulligan fell down the coulee by the Burns house, which is now Gooderjohn's house. But we were running towards the school, and she fell down and broke an arm. And that was a disaster. Nobody else had ever broken a bone around there. I think I remembered more because I was probably the oldest and should have been taking care of her, so I was covered with the guilt trip. I wasn't suffering from a guilt trip the night That would have been 5th and 6th grade because Miss Campbell was the teacher. We all got caught during the noon hour smoking behind the school. And this was not good. And I was especially angry about it because the big kids had broken the cigarettes they had in half and given each one of the little kids, wee little kids, one of them so we wouldn't tell. And we all got caught, and I had never been able to get mine lit. So I didn't feel guilty, I just felt that I had not too good.
You were cheated.
Cheated, that's the word. So nothing worse than this whole feeling of non-guilt. But I do remember she made every one of us absolutely promise we wouldn't smoke a cigarette until we finished high school. And I have a feeling there were a lot of us who held to that. I don't know about the boys, but I don't think many of we girls did at the time.
So before there were health concerns about smoking, why did she think it would be bad for you to smoke?
There was sort of the idea that there were some things nice girls didn't do, and smoking was one of them.
I see.
When you got older, well, I think it sort of held up all the way through. There were a lot of girls who did smoke and a lot of didn't. It seemed to make a difference. Once you were married, you didn't look at a married woman who smoked. But if you weren't married and smoked, maybe you were a little bit fast.
Okay.
Okay. Any more silly questions like that? It was all a matter of perception, I think.